Hello lads, we are here to talk about JWK switches. Some of you may not know what qualifies as a JWK switch. There's a lot of JWK switches. You've got T1s, Durocks, Koalas, Red Blacks, Silent Alpacas, Everglides, H1s, Mauves, Lilacs, the new Tangarines, the OAs that are coming out soon, the OPBlacks. Almost everything that you think of that is coming out that's not a Gateron or a Cherry switch is most likely a JWK switch. And we're going to talk about what's going on with JWK, because a lot of people ask me, hey Simon, what do you think of X? To which my first question is it a JWK recolor? If so, here's what I think, because there's just so many. So I've got my little detective hat on today because we're going to detect. We're going to talk about the objectively bad things about them and the objectively good things about them. And like everything else, besides the objective bad and the objective good, the rest is preference. So you guys can make your own decisions. You can use your own brain cells. You guys will be fine. So let's jump into the mini cam. Here we are on the mini cam. Here we've got a few JWK switches. It doesn't matter what they are. They're all the same. They all come from the same factory, although they look different and have different housings, different housing materials, different stem colors. Some are linear. Some are tactile, etc., etc. The important thing is they're all JWK. Always has been. All right, so first we'll talk about what's good about them. There are two main good things about JWK switches. Thing number one is that they are pretty smooth. Actually, surprisingly smooth overall. They are smooth switches. They are one of the smoothest stock switches. That is also a problem that we'll talk about during the problem section, but they are nice and smooth switches. And the second reason why they are good is they are very consistent switches. So for example, if I were to buy, let's say, 300 Gatorons, maybe 100 or 150 would not be so great. These do significantly better and have a far smaller failure rate when cherry picking for consistency, which is something that high-end builders will do. So overall, they're a nice, decent switch. All right, now let's talk about the bads. Okay, ever since the very first round of JWK, so as early as things like this. If you don't know what this is, find out. These were lovely, and these are what started all of the hype. So from the very beginning, one of the major issues is that here, let me get it on something. Is the top housing doesn't sit properly flush on the bottom housing. It has a little bit of play. And it's incredibly, incredibly hard to show it on camera because the play is so small. However, you can feel it. In addition to this, you can hear it. So let me get out my microphone so you guys can hear what a wobbly top sounds like compared to a standard top. All right, we got our microphone in frame there. You guys ready? So I'm just gonna move this top around a little bit in its place. Guys hear that? That's literally just me touching the top. You should not hear this on any other switch, but on JWKs, it is almost always an issue. Here is a Gateron Tangarine for reference. No movement. No movement at all. And that applies to pretty much every single JWK that's ever been made. So we've got the wobbly top. That's not a major issue. It just means that the stem will move a little bit more as the top housing moves around a little bit more, which can lead to a little bit of a wobbly feeling switch, which is okay because this can be resolved. Now, thing number two is not only are the tops wobbly, but they're incredibly thin. As a result, the stem return sound is very high-pitched on JWK switches. Again, I will compare a JWK to a Gateron switch. So here is the return of a JWK. And another one. And here's a Gateron. That's quite interesting. So what most people tend to do is they will put films in their JWKs. It's pretty much a requirement for having a decent sounding and decent feeling JWK. After filming it, I'll give you an example. This is a filmed alpaca, and I'll compare it to a Gatoron, but it still remains high-pitched. All right, you guys get the idea. You can hear the difference between, you know, a JWK and just some other switch. They are rather high pitched. So that's issue number 1 and issue number 2. Both of those issues can be solved with switch films, which is easy peasy. Now, going into issue number 3, these guys are really smooth. And yes, they are. They are incredibly smooth. They are incredibly smooth because the vast majority, except for the NK dries and maybe some other ones, are factory lubed. Now, factory lubed is great if you're going to be using a stock switch, which we've already determined you're not going to because you need to open it up to film it anyways. Otherwise, it's going to sound very high-pitched and be a little bit wobbly. So, it comes factory lubed. That means you can't add your lube, otherwise you're mixing lubes, which means the lubes won't actually mix together, kind of like water and oil. One is just going to rub against the other and end up pooling somewhere. So what you need to do is actually de-lube them, which means you need to get some applicators, such as these, some makeup applicators, and essentially wipe the lube off until this applicator is full of lube, and then replace it with another applicator, go through, you know, many applicators for, you know, a TKL worth of keyboards just to remove all of the lube so you can lube your switches with the lube that you want. Alternatively, you can just use it for like 2 years and the lube will wear off, but, you know, after 2 years, it's already going to be fine. So we've got the factory lubed issue. If you're going to use your switch completely stock, that is actually a big bonus. But if you're going to open up your switch and mod it in any way, probably not great. Next issue. These lads are expensive. Average going rate could be 50 cents, could be 60 cents. It completely depends who you're buying from. But remember, you're literally buying the same switch with pretty colors at wildly different price points, right? Now, let's get out of the big old micro cam. Here we are with the normie cam. So we got our JWKs, but these guys are pricey. For the price of this, or this, or this, what I can do is grab 3 of these. These are Gatoron Milky Top linears. Doesn't matter what color they are because I spring swap them. But that means I can buy 3, sometimes 4 of these Gatorons at 15 cents each, or actually sometimes 5 of these at 15 cents each, and cherry pick the smoothest ones and end up with a far better sounding, so deeper sounding switch that doesn't need to be de-lubed if you want to use it. So a lot of people ask me, hey Simon, you hate all the JWKs, what should I get instead? Get some Milky Top Gatorons, buy them off Taobao, they're 15 cents each, and you can literally buy up to 5 times as many switches and just cherry pick. And on like the ones that you decide not to use, you can give to a friend or a buddy and introduce them into the hobby, which is something a lot more beneficial to be doing with your, 50 plus cents per switch than buying, a problematic switch. All right, one final thing that I'll demonstrate not here. I'm actually just going to use a clip from my stream. As last night I tried to rebuild a keyboard of mine with these switches. I ran into the issue where the PCB mount pins, so these plastic ones, not the metal ones, are a little too small for a lot of PCBs. And that can lead to an issue where if you plan to solder them and flip over your keyboard, they'll slip right out of the holes. Which then means if you are using PCB mount, so not putting them into a plate, for a half plate or a plateless build, for example, you may run into the issue where none of them are going to sit perfectly straight on the PCB. Due to the fact that the pins are a little bit small, they might slide out in one of the directions or God forbid, turn some sort of rotation, which then means when you put the keycaps on your board, you're going to notice that a lot of them are bent. So here, I'll show you guys an example from my stream. Here's the issue. You guys ready? These are now in the PCB. And now they're not. I'm literally a magician. Keyboard magic. Keyboard magic. Keyboard magic. So yeah, these are unusable. So they have the issue where their PPs are too small. So when I put them in the hole, right? I put them in the hole and I do this, they just disappear. All right, so that is not a viable option. We cannot put these inside of PCB mount. So that's another issue with JWK switches. Yeah, more issues with JWK switches. I love it. All right, so where does that leave us? It leaves us with a whole bunch of bad and a little bit of good for JWK switches. Does this mean that JWK switches are bad? No. Does it mean that they are poor value? In my opinion, I think they are poor value considering that they have to be modded in order to sound half decent and not have a wobbly top. They're poor value if you are trying to do a PCB mount build instead of a plate mounted switch build, which can be problematic. And if these don't really apply to you and you just want the absolute smoothest switch that's, not a vintage black, it is a viable option. It is a little bit expensive for what it is, and you have to put a lot of work in, specifically in delubing the switches, but otherwise, they're totally fine. So it's up to you. If you're looking for an easy entry switch where you're not going to lube anything and maybe throw some films on it, it's okay. However, keep in mind, you can buy 4 or 5 Gatorons for the price of 1 JWK in a lot of cases, and potentially have a way better experience, but that is entirely up to you guys. So you guys make your own decisions. Those are the facts and my small opinion of poor value. That's pretty much it. See you guys in the next one.